Welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Hinson.
I'm Sarah Veseloff.
And I'm Frederick Philip von Weiss. And thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology.
That love what they do and do tech good. We really messed that up.
I think we did really well. I think you're underestimating how perfect that sync was.
Just add an echo at the end.
I'll use my reverb on my pedal that's on the floor that I made up in my head. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Really appreciate you joining us again for another episode. And we want to also thank our sponsor for supporting us all year. And our sponsor is Pantheon. Please visit pantheon.io. They provide a platform for WordPress, for Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Drupal 27. They'll go forever. They provide you with a dev, a test, a live environment, so you could push your stuff up, check it out, see what meshes before you push it and deploy along the way upstream. So it's a great way to test your stuff. They have a way to set up daily backups. They vet any kind of updates that come from WordPress or Drupal before you push it up to make sure everything's cool, meshes with all your stuff, so then you could deploy it and make sure everything works. They're a really cool service, so please check them out at pantheon.io. Thank you so much, Pantheon.
And don't forget Lasagna Tuesdays.
Yeah, on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, they have a veggie lasagna, so go check them out at their office, pantheon.io. That's amore.
And also check out our YouTube channel. We have hundreds of videos ranging from conference events and all of the wonderful guests we have on the show. And subscribe and click that wonderful bell icon and you'll get notified. And of course, on your podcast player choice, we're available there. Search us Thunder Nerds, subscribe, listen, and leave a review on iTunes, etc. And thank you for listening.
That was a lot of ands.
And Sarah, and
we're going to be at DevFest on November 16th. So you can find out more about DevFest at devfestflorida.org. We'll definitely provide that link for you as well. And we have a nice little contest going on. Yeah. You can win a free ticket to DevFest Florida for Saturday, November 16th. So right now that ticket's worth $50. After November 16th, it's going to be worth $200 at the door. So if you want your free ticket, just at Thunder Nerds and at DevFestFL and say, I want the ticket. And we're going to choose a random winner live on the show in late October.
Yeah, and thanks everybody so much for already participating and sending us your tweets. We have you down, and we're going to be giving away those tickets. So with all that being said, why don't we get to our amazing guest that we have today? Let's welcome writer, photographer, designer, front-end developer, Stammy himself, Paul Stamatiou. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Excited to be here.
Appreciate it. Nice. So, Paul, man, where are you joining us from? You look like you are in some kind of Apple-ish, big Apple-y, red, shiny place of the city.
Yeah, I am in New York right now. Pretty new city for me. I moved here about 6-7 months ago from San Francisco, so still getting acclimated to the environment here.
Oh, cool, dude. So what made you go from the San Franciscos to the New Yorks?
I had been in San Francisco almost 8.5, 9 years, just looking for a little bit of a change of scenery. I kind of felt like every year in San Francisco was almost the same. I hopped around different neighborhoods, but I had the same set of friends, and I was just kind of looking for something different. And fortunately, Twitter was cool with me transferring to our New York office, so that made the transition to New York life pretty easy. So I just decided to pack up and do it.
Nice, dude. Yeah, that's really cool. It's a different kind of culture. I don't want to say it's this and that, but it definitely has its own kind of vibe. Was that a difficult transition for you to kind of get acclimated and really invest in immersion of that area?
The biggest surprise for me compared to like San Francisco is New York is just like such variety of types of industries that are taking off here. It's not just tech. There's different people, obviously, that work in these different industries. And of course, New York is so dense that there's always something going on. And that was probably the absolute number one, huge change for me, where San Francisco, it could be 8 o'clock on a weekday and there would be no one on my block. There'd be no restaurants open. In New York, I can walk down the street, get anything at any time of the day. So
sushi at 2 a.m.
Nice change. Yeah.
Have you taken advantage of that yet?
I've definitely had a lot of late night pizza around the area. I'm in East Village, so there's food all around me.
Nice.
Sorry. That would be like, that's probably the number one change. The number two change is like I can take the subway everywhere. That's a big shock to me. I still walk a lot. San Francisco, I walked everywhere or took Uber everywhere, so it was one or the other. But being able to just take the subway very quickly, get across town, that would be impossible with cars, is very nice.
Hey, do you think?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever bring your car over? I know you I read your blog post, shipped it.
I'm a big car guy, but I don't think while I'm living in Manhattan it makes sense.
Makes sense.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like also like I'm a car guy, so I feel like the winters up here and the salt would just like corrode some of the metal in the car. Like I don't want to subject a car to that unless it's like a total beater.
What kind of car are we talking about?
So my car is a 2012 E92 M3 that I modified it a little bit. I changed exhaust, obviously. I changed the software. Of course, like cars these days, you can just change software. I changed the software in the computer, changed the software in the transmission, so it shift faster, and it kind of downshifts whenever I wanted to, and rev matches and all these things. I changed the timing belt. There's like an underdrive pulley, which like takes less power for the alternator and gives it more to the engine, and less like you're flooring it, in which case it turns off the AC to give your car more power, like various things like that. So I think I was doing like 444 horsepower. But in SF, this is just like for fun. I don't need it to go anywhere.
For our audio listeners, by the way, his eyes are twinkling as he's talking right now.
Yes.
You should go back and watch the video. I think this is very indicative of your personality, especially if we talk about where you came from and how you got your start in technology. Like you were always a tinkerer, right? You would take things apart. You would help your teachers with we'll date ourselves a little bit with going into like fireworks and making websites and things like that. And you kind of found design a little bit later in life. Do you mind with a little bit of brevity, just kind of walking us a little bit through how you got from where you are now, or from where you were to where you are now, and what that looks like? Yeah, definitely. Growing up, I was really, really into electronics, taking things apart, like trying to figure out how circuits worked. When I was younger, I would go to Radio Shack all the time. Back when Radio Shack wasn't like a mobile phone store, and back when it was like hobbyist computer parts. I would go there often enough that one of the, I guess he was one of the franchise owners. He would like basically be teaching me like basic at the time. I would walk into the Radio Shack. I would need some resistors or some parts. And like this old, old school computer guy that owned the store, I think I would ask him stuff about like programming basic. He would teach me a few things because at the time I was really into this company called Parallax. They had these programmable microchips called the Basic Stamp. And it was basic because it programmed in BASIC. And I was building like little breadboard robots out of those things. It's kind of like an early Arduino equivalent, I would say. So I was really into tinkering electronics. I was soldering at a young age, and I have like a nice scar on my leg to prove it when I dropped like a blob of like molten solder on my leg.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah. And then I went to college. I was still really into electronics. Along the way, I'd gotten more into like computers and software, but I still thought that electronics and electrical engineering was my calling. So I spent my first year doing like the digital signal processing, things like that. And then I thought I was going to be like making motherboards as my job when I grew up. I was like, that's what electrical engineers do, computer engineers do, right? Somewhere in the middle of like some advanced signal processing class, I was like, this is not for me. And my university, I went to Georgia Tech in Atlanta. They had a newish major at the time called computational media. And it was a hybrid between computer science, design, film, literature, communication. So it was kind of a mixed mash of like a little bit of everything. And some friends of mine switched majors to that. That seemed interesting. So I switched majors to that. I was a little behind because like I spent my first year doing like electrical engineering classes, but then I think that's where my calling was. And around that time, just the power of the web was more common. Blogs were taking off. That was the thing. And people were having their own slice of the web. And I was like, oh, I want to do this too. Yeah. You definitely have that spirit where you need to take things apart. And I think that's probably what led to your, if you will, your entrepreneurial spirit as well, because you started a few companies in this industry, and they were fairly successful. Do you mind touching on that a little bit too? Yeah, so kind of like fast forwarding a little bit through college. So I graduated as this computational media major, and it was a fun major. Like I had one class where I was learning C programming but we were programming for the Game Boy Advance at the time. So we were actually making like games as one of my classes. So we'd have to design the sprites and the levels and then figure out how to work with video buffers and registers and actually get this thing working. Anyways, I feel like I graduated not being a good designer or a good developer. So I was kind of in this weird position. So I kind of ended up making my own job right out of college. Fortunately, what happened was there was this startup weekend that was in Atlanta at the time. And startup weekend had been around for like a year or two at the time. And the general premise was a bunch of people interested in technology get together for like a 48-hour hackathon. The first night is people in various groups pitch ideas. They get voted on, and the top idea or ideas gets worked on that weekend. So I worked on an idea, and I had started blogging at the time. So my annoyance was like I didn't know what to write about. So I ended up doing this thing called Scribit, which ended up, I had a co-founder that worked on it with me. We raised a little bit of funding from Georgia Tech themselves. And I worked on that after I graduated. But the premise behind that was it was a widget you put on your site. You'd get recommendations about things to write about from your audience. And they would vote on it. And then they would get notified if you ended up writing anything about that, kind of complete the loop there. So that was my first startup out of the gate. I kept working with that. My co-founder had a full-time job. He's a little bit older than me, but I worked on it full-time myself and did that for a while. And around the same time, I had gone to like a South by Southwest and I talked to people and everyone was in San Francisco. So about a year or two of doing the first startup, kind of realized that, it had some success. It was making some money, but the biggest problem with it was that people would put it on their sidebar and expect to get a lot of recommendations, but people's blogs at the time didn't really get much traffic. So that combined with people having to scroll to the bottom of their page to get any like suggestions about content that they should write was pretty low. So to wrap that up, ended up moving to San Francisco with no job at all in 2010, and ended up linking up with an old colleague from university, Chad Etzel, and he had just finished Y Combinator as a single founder for this startup called Notifo. And Notifo at the time was taking advantage of iOS 3 that had just released push notifications. And the vision here was that push is going to become really annoying. And we wanted like an inbox of sorts to help manage this, give people control over push notifications, and also enable web developers that at the time, like no one was really like developing iOS apps, only a small subset of people, give web developers a way to send notifications to people that had iPhones. So we did a startup there. I joined him as his co-founder. And then that was interesting. We ended up kind of finding like a chicken and egg problem where we were getting a lot of people using it, like hundreds of thousands of notifications we were sending per day for people that had made the services on our platform. But a lot of it was like hobbyists just playing with it. Like, server downtime notifications was a big use case for us. So we spent time tinkering on, analytics dashboards we can provide, things like that. Eventually kind of shifted gears and decided to change direction. And then I started another company with another friend, Akshay. And it was around if we could rethink what Shutterfly was, but in 2011 at the time. So just photo printing, photo sharing. And I went through Y Combinator with that, with Akshay. We raised some money, but we knew that photo printing wasn't the future, but we wanted to like do a first initial product around that and then go from there. And that went well. We had a nice product we liked. The first idea was around subscription photo prints to your friends and family. So this is really popular with new parents. They would email us photos or drag photos in, and every month they would physically be printed and shipped out to their recipients. For the first, 6 months or 9 months, we were printing at a local print shop in San Francisco, and then I would pick them up, and then we would put them in like packaging and then mail them out from our apartment. So every morning for like an hour or three, we were just like putting all these envelopes together, which took quite a while. Then we outsourced it to a print house. But then the biggest problem with that industry was just a lot of customer support. Like my package didn't arrive. We would be nice and send it again. It wouldn't arrive again. And some of these addresses are just like, you have relatives all over the world. So some of these addresses are
Iceland.
Yeah. There's no, some of the addresses didn't have numbers. They were just this behind this. And that was an actual address. So we would have some issues with that. And around then we started thinking about what's the next step. It's not gonna be photo printing as a core business model. So we kind of ideated and we're starting to play around with a concept around a custom camera in an app, backed up photos in the cloud, direct messaging. So like some confluence of what basically every photo app does today. We thought we were going to kind of push forward in that. And at the time, we didn't raise too much after Y Combinator. We raised from a couple investors, but we didn't really know what our vision was at the time. So we didn't want to like take much money without knowing where we're going. But now that we had this concept, we went out fundraising, spent a lot of time fundraising. And unfortunately for us, Instagram just got acquired at that time. And every potential investor we're talking to, they were like, your biggest potential acquirer, Facebook, is now like maybe out of the market for a while because they just acquired this photos thing, Instagram. It's a little too risky for us to invest in photos, but you're smart guys. We'll invest in you if you do literally anything else, but maybe not photos. So around the time, I've been doing my own startups for 5 years now. I was kind of burnt out. I was making almost no salary for years. And I was like, I should probably just pay off some student loans finally. Fortunately, around then, Twitter had reached out. One of their directors of engineering read an article I wrote in my blog about lifecycle email marketing. I had just written some article about how I built some like email system for our startup at the time. And that led to a conversation with Twitter. And
you've been there for 20 years now, is it?
Yeah.
I think in tech years, it's about 20 years.
Yeah, it's been over 6.5 years now. So, I mean, I never really thought about working at Twitter. I used Twitter. I remember I actually blogged about when Twitter came out from Odeo. And then I didn't sign up until 6 months later. But I've been using Twitter night and day, like basically since it was launched. I never actually thought about working there. For some reason, I had in my head like, oh, professionals work there. I'm not a professional. I didn't even come across my mind. Yet I was using this product every single day. And then when they reached out, it's like, oh, this makes sense.
It's so funny how we interpret ourselves, but you can't judge a book by what you read in it. Everybody has their own perception. Maybe we should jump into a little bit of, since we're talking about Twitter, what do you actually do at Twitter? What's your day-to-day like there?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a product designer, and what that means is I work on, in my day-to-day, my general expertise is around visual design, software mockups for our mobile apps primarily, and also a lot of prototyping. So once I kind of design a concept, prototype it I usually use Framer, which is like you write some JavaScript, you link together some interactions, and you get a really high fidelity prototype you can preview on your phone, play around with it, and test. So my day-to-day I'm usually in kind of two modes at the same time. One mode is I had already designed a product or feature that's in development, and I'm spending time with engineering. I'm usually, first thing I do is I'll update our internal dog food applications and like our internal testing apps, and I'll see what's changed in the feature that we've been actively developing. I'll find a couple of like small things that need to be fixed or enhanced, or maybe things for us to think about later. So it usually involves me making a couple of Jira tickets. Sometimes it's screenshots and opening the screenshots in Figma and like annotating some like changes to like the spec a little bit, like, oh, move this up 5 dips. It's a little off. Sometimes as we get further in things and I'm trying to figure out the motion, I'll do a screencast of like the Android app or something, or the iPhone app. And then I'll like sit there frame by frame and I'll count frames out of 60 FPS. I'm like, okay, this was 15 frames. This transition is let's do something like 150 milliseconds instead. Let's change it a bit. And then I'll make a ticket around that. So really like nitty gritty pixel stuff. That's part of my day. The other part of my day is I probably have a project that we're exploring or that we're thinking about investing in, or I'm just in Figma or Framer designing or prototyping. So I'm kind of in one of those two modes, or usually both at some kind of part of that. The rest of my day, I might have a meeting with another designer as part of our mentorship program to share work and just talk about things going on. I usually have at least one meeting with my product manager every day. So when I moved to New York, I'm entirely remote for my direct teams. My direct teams are 100% based in San Francisco and not 100%. We also have folks in Boulder, but I primarily work with engineers and a product manager based out of San Francisco. So definitely need to be proactive about spending some time on Google Hangouts to kind of get some face time. So I'll spend some time with my product manager and figure out if we're on the same page, what we're doing. And even if we don't have stuff to talk about work, usually that time is valuable just to talk about the space that we're working in and what we could do next. So usually have a meeting like that. Maybe depending on the day, I might have a design critique that I'm in, either someone on my team or someone else on another team that's just sharing work. And they maybe invited me because I have experience with maybe tweet composing or the Twitter camera, and they're touching something like that. And that's like usually a 45-minute design crit. They share work, I provide feedback, vice versa, or I'm presenting at a design crit, or a lot of work sharing, stuff like that.
It's going to be hard, like going from being in office to being remote. I'm a 100% remote worker and have been for like 3 years. So where I've been, the people I work with are all remote. I mean, has that been really challenging for you to figure out kind of what your day looks like and how you interact with people that you used to be in the same office with?
Yeah, I think I kind of have the easier end of the stick in that when I moved here, I had been working with these people, like my direct team for years out of San Francisco. So I've already built up that rapport. I know how to work with everybody. So it honestly was like nothing changed. The only thing that changed was that because of the time zones, I have like 3 hours in the morning where SF is still not in the office, and it's nice, peace and quiet, and I get some work done.
And the lack of Taco Tuesdays with the team, it's probably rough.
Yeah, that's probably rough as well.
And I love tacos. I'm sorry. Maybe we should take a minute. It's interesting. What did you bring from your previous experience then that you're applying to Twitter the most, that you feel like, you know what, after building these businesses and, you know, I have such a creative mind, what do you bring to, what did you feel like you brought to the team that you use every day?
I think the one thing is being a little more technically minded. When I was doing a startup, I was wearing both hats. I was building things, I was designing things, and I was always going between the two. So I feel like I have a pretty good grasp about when it comes to like eng costing, like the act of like, if I'm proposing a feature, knowing like that this component might take 2 to 3 days to build, this part might take this much time. And also kind of helps me like figure out where to design first. If I know the scope of a project is smaller or larger, it might mean like, oh, well, I know this view is built inside of this, so I can't like activate that intent outside of it, or I can't do a certain transition, so I won't bother with that. Maybe like for a V2, we'll consider that. But I know it's just going to be a conversation with engineering where this is a little more challenging and outside of our scope. So let's do something that already uses components that we have, design components, engineering components. So I think I bring definitely a little more tech angle to things from the design side. Other than that, I think it's more of the opposite. I think Twitter has been teaching me a lot more than what I'm bringing to Twitter from my startup experience, for sure. Awesome.
Yeah, and if you want to read more about what he does at Twitter, his website has an amazing case study on design Twitter video. It's a really awesome case study. And in general, I'm going to fanboy for a second. I've been following you since you started your blog through 9 Rules and all of that.
Long time ago.
I was super psyched to talk to you directly.
2005.
Yeah. And this is kind of our next topic. We really wanted to talk about, you know, what's like writing your blog. You've just a little overview. He's been blogging for, you know, over a decade now. I think I'm right.
Yeah, I think it's 14 years now.
Yeah, and it's been consistent. And things he's written about is like a Google video search engine coming out, a review of Flock web browser, which I remember that the social browser. Did it die? Did it go away?
So. I think so.
Curious.
There was another one called Rockmelt, which was very similar for a while.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, and Intro to Web 2.0. You broke your gas pedal. What was that about, by the way?
Oh, I had a Mustang, and the pedal literally just broke.
It pushed it too hard?
Yeah, I think so.
You're a monster.
2007, Netflix streaming starting. You know, the MacBook Air launching. I loved his Android is Better article, and more recently, he built a Lightroom machine, and he has a wonderful article this year about, well, he updated this year, made on an iPad. So it's what I find amazing to look back at your writing in preparation for this is just the sheer scope of it. And it's such a wonderful time machine of going back. And it's not, you don't have to use Wayback Machine to look at it either. You can actually, his site still has all that content, and you can actually see your writing mature too, where you're writing very like a single paragraph to these like long form articles now. So why did you start blogging besides, I think you mentioned you saw it and you kind of wanted to do it too. Is that?
Yeah, I think it was maybe my freshman year of college. I had some roommates, sorry, some like hallmates that I met, and they were really into Linux, like deep nerds. I was hanging out with them. They helped. Like I remember going to a Linux users group install fest, and they had a burned disk that says Ubuntu, and everyone's like, "Oh, what's that?" And now it's like obviously the most popular distro. But they were interested in actually like the like wiki software that powers like Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I forgot what the open source name is. It's like Wikimedia, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So I was like just curious about how to install that, how to host it myself. So I started that summer when I went home for summer break. I installed some wiki software. I thought that was cool. A little bit later, I started checking out WordPress at the time. I figured why not buy my name as a domain, set up WordPress.
So it's been on WordPress this entire time?
No. I'll get to that. So I started off at WordPress, and there was a really cool theme at the time that had just launched. It was called K2. There's this designer, Michael Heileman, who I think is a design lead at Squarespace now in New York. I was like fanboying his site. I was checking it. I was like asking him questions about how like he does CSS backgrounds and like just learning. I was learning CSS through the act of like wanting to modify my website. So I got really interested in that, and then eventually kind of added my own like look to it. And then I started like 1 or 2 posts. And the thing that hooked me was I wrote an article about how to set up a BitTorrent client for just using it and making it faster. And I wrote it with the intent of just literally sharing that one post with a friend who was trying to set up BitTorrent properly. And then I got on the front page of Dig, Lifehacker, and all these other websites. And it was hosted on my Mac Mini at the time in college in the dorm. And it actually killed my hard drive because there was so much traffic.
Oh man, that
so then after that, I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. Like people are actually reading this. And I had like some like tracking software, Mint, I think it was at the time. And I was seeing where everyone was coming from. I was like, this is really cool. So I started initially just like getting hooked on that and wanting to just keep up with tech news. So a lot of my posts, like for the first like 10 years, probably the first 7 years, were very much like smaller snippets. This is some news that's happening. Here's a quick take on it. And I would maybe come back from class and I would do like 3 of those a day.
And I noticed too, if you look at the history of like the amount you have, that when you're not in school, it like went up a little bit. And then when you went back into school, it went down. Yeah. My dog's barking in the background. But what kept you going throughout this? You're still doing it.
I think at some point it shifted from like the novelty to just being amazed that I would share something or how to do something. And I would get emails from people like, oh, thanks for writing this. Have you tried this? Like, what do you think about this? And I was like, oh, people actually care. People are actually reading this. Granted, this was back in like the golden age of blogging where people were actually blogging. Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of sad that personal blogs aren't as big of a thing as they are now. Ironically,
they're coming back.
Yeah, they're coming back. Ironically, I work at Twitter, and some people say like Twitter is what replaced blogs. But I think what I noticed over time was I wanted to focus on something that only I could write, something I have a unique take on. And competing with tech news, I was just one of hundreds or thousands of sites that are just reporting on the same tech news. And then I really like writing reviews and guides like that. But on reviews, like I couldn't compete. Like everyone was going to review this new iPod. I remember talking about the iPod Nano when that came out. So I didn't think that's where my bread and butter was. So over time, I kind of shifted from tech news that was just happening in the world to things that I thought I had a unique take on and that I can go really in depth on. And I just started going there. And now I maybe post twice a year, maybe, but these posts take basically 3 months of spare time. I
was wondering about that.
I sacrifice a couple weekends, maybe like a little bit here and there, like on a weeknight, but usually weeknights I'm just tired.
His posts that he posts now, by the way, check them out. They're extremely long, extremely detailed, well written, and just lots of great information. So
may I also add that they're very diverse too. You also have things where I've seen some of the travel stuff that you have up too. That's really cool.
Yeah, that was kind of a recent addition of going more into photography as well. So I kind of have 2 sections of my site. One's photos, one's just tech stuff that interests me. So the photo stuff, I was the first time I really got into it. I had maintained a photos section for a while, but it was just one-off photos. And it wasn't until I think 2013, I went to Japan for the first time, only time. And I was like, I want to do something different. I want to like keep a log of everything I do. I want to like annotate like what the temperature was like on each day. I want to figure out where I went and do some kind of unique representation around it. So I ended up spending a lot of time after I came back building this new photo set layout and integrating parts of like my trip experience. I had auto playing videos mainly to kind of give some like ambient sound of what it was like walking through Kyoto. So I really got really engaged in custom designing something to share my travel experience. And then since I've probably redesigned that photo set layout like 3-4 times by now.
Yeah, I love that layout. It's very, very nice, very
Thanks.
clean.
Do you mind if I just quickly ask you? Why did you actually go to Japan? Do you speak the language or anything? Or
no, just my sister and I wanted to do something, get out of the country, and I hadn't taken any international vacations in at least 5 years because I was doing my startup. I was just workaholic. I was working too much, and I had not taken like any vacations. And I was like, oh, I could take vacations now. And
it's important to get some screen time
Yeah.
or get away from the screen rather.
Could take vacations like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So somewhere along the way, my sister and I decided on Japan to start with.
So I do want to get into a little bit of your process. You've mentioned if you spend weekends writing, but I'm curious before I ask that, have there been any negatives to having such a long running blog and posting like this?
The only negative, and this is like a very light negative, is that I feel like I'm always on the hook to keep publishing. And my biggest worry is that my biggest worry is that a year will pass and I'll have published nothing new. So it's kind of making sure I always have something I'm thinking about for a potential future post.
You have to be in that author publisher mindset when you're experiencing things sometimes.
Yeah.
You're my dog.
Mm-hmm. I heard the dog say, "Yeah, I need to go lie down."
Yeah, go lie down. So what is your process like? Like how do you construct these amazing posts?
So I've been working on another post that's not out yet. It'll be maybe out in like 1 or 2 weeks. It's on the topic of like security keys and how all that stuff works.
Ooh.
But it usually starts out with an outline, and maybe I have usually what it is. It's something that I've been immersed in myself for a while now. It's a hobby. It's a new product. It's a new process. It's something that I've been doing myself for like at least a couple months, and I'm kind of immersed in that world. I've done enough research on the topic, or I'm just through the act of me doing it myself a lot. I kind of feel like I have a very good grasp, and I want to share that and share the pros and cons, or share how I changed some process that I'm doing. So it starts out with an outline, and I just maybe have like a Google Doc, whatever flavor of app I'm using for note taking, because it changes like every 3 months. Right now I'm on Notion. I used to be on Bear. I used to be on Google Keep. I used to be on. It just keeps changing.
I hear you.
So we'll start with outline. Intro, maybe some nice headline that catches you, and then it starts out simple. It's maybe like 5-6 bullet points, and then as I'm like thinking more about it over like a month, I'll just keep adding more color to each bullet. And then one day I'll just like turn each bullet into a paragraph one at a time. And then it goes from whatever that doc was, and maybe it goes into my code editor. And then I think the hardest part is actually the photos. So I take a lot of pride in my posts having like really quality photos for whatever it is, if it's a product or if it's a trip. So I feel like half the work is just taking the photos, picking the ones. The one I'm working on now is pretty simple post, but I think I took like 1,500 photos and then I whittled it down to 50. So I think a lot of the work is just like picking out the photos, putting them in the post, and then writing the copy around that. And then the other half is just proofreading.
Do you mind if I ask you what kind of camera you use? Are you like an old school Hasselblad kind of guy, or what are you?
Website.
Yeah,
well, I know what it is, Brian, but for our audience that is listening, it would be entertaining.
Yeah, usually it's my Sony Alpha, whatever the latest flavor is. Recently, like a month ago, the A7R4 came out, so I got that one. And I've kind of amassed a larger collection of lenses here and there. The one that like was I didn't think would get much use out of it was my 90mm macro lens. That thing is amazing for product shots. Like you can just focus like 2 inches away and get a lot of detail compared to being further out, even with the 55 or even an 85 that's not macro. You have to crop quite a bit to even get pretty close. And then of course I built a custom Lightroom computer to edit all these large photos. So that was a book that I wrote basically.
Yeah, and then you updated it because
that was a hard one. I was like
mini ITX, yeah.
I was like, oh, if I update this, I'm gonna have to update the post too. So I was like, oh, I don't want to do that.
So when do you know it's ready? Your post is ready to go up? Like when you're like, okay, it's time.
That's a hard point. At some point, there's just like nearing month 3 or 4. It's like I'm getting a little annoyed. I just need to publish this. And then once you're at that point, you're always like also like worried that like if it's about a particular technology, you're worried you're gonna wake up one day and there's gonna be a headline of like, oh, so and so released this other version that does all this stuff, and you're like, oh, I gotta rewrite it. Versus like if it's already out, like I don't have to deal with that as much. I can just like put an update post and link to something.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite thing that you've written that you reference back, or you go to your own website occasionally and click it and be like, that's really nice?
I don't. I think the closest would be my New York post that I posted recently. I feel like it's compared to all my tech posts, which can feel dated. I feel like this one will hopefully feel evergreenish, and it kind of lasts for a while.
Do you have any tips for people that are looking to become more of an author publisher in this kind of realm? Things like, this is a good way to start off writing. Don't wait for people to give you permission to write, or things such as, just go ahead and jump in.
Yeah.
No matter what you have, it's always good to, at least if you start somewhere, you have context and reference. And
I think it's absolutely the latter. It's just like, start it, go do it. Doesn't matter if you don't like your domain name or your blog theme. Just focus on the content you're putting out there. And I think the other thing is, maybe this is coming from my train of thought. Just you don't have to like sit down in one setting and one session and just write and publish it. This could be a longer going thing, and you can spend more time on it. I think maybe I don't necessarily know if the effort ends up affecting the impact, like, oh, because you spent more time on it, like you might get more viewers. There's some very technical things that I write that like the audience is obviously much smaller, so it's like that wasn't really worth the time. But for me, I did it for me. I wanted to share what I'm doing, and also I kind of view my site as like a personal portfolio of sorts. Maybe it's not design work, it's just like things that I spend time on that I'm proud of, that I want to put out there, be it photos or things that I'm doing.
Yeah, there's definitely different kinds of types of writing. There's writing that's things for a quick digestion, things that are, topical and very interesting in the moment. And then there's these, as you keep saying, which is important to highlight, these evergreen pieces that you could go back to at any point and read and find a lot of value in there, because as you cited, you put the time into developing some kind of article that has a really a good amount of information that's advantageous for a large audience.
Yeah, I also think that it's also like when you go to someone's website, assuming it's like theirname.com, today the popular thing is like it's a landing page. Here are my social links. Here's some massive text, like one sentence about who I am and what I do. Yeah. And then that's it. Like you don't really know who this person is. Maybe you click their Instagram. That doesn't provide much context. Hopefully their Twitter has something on it so you can kind of glean who this person is. But I'm really missing the days of you go to someone's site and like, oh, they've been writing some stuff for a couple of years, and you get to know who they are and what they're interested in. So I think just going out there and publishing something, even if you don't think that a lot of people are going to come to your site.
You realize though, with all the content on your blog, they're going to be able to make a Stammy AI bot of you in the future.
I feel like someone made an ebooks account of me once.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
So, since you just invoked the name, Brian, why don't we talk about where that Stammy came from? This goes back.
Invoked.
You like that? This goes back a few years. Do you mind going into the story?
Yeah. So when I started my blog, maybe a couple years later, there was a very popular blogging community called 9 Rules, and they were like, you'd go to a nice blog, and it would be well designed. You'd really like it, and you'd see this little leaf icon in the corner, and it was like a symbol at the time of like, this is a high quality content, invite only. So I was really like interested in this community. I was just kind of lurking outside the gates for a while, publishing more and more. Eventually I applied when I was like maybe 19, like freshman, maybe sophomore in college. And I got in, and my blog got accepted. I was like the one of the nerdiest moments. My blog got accepted. I was telling my hallmates, and they're like, "What?" And there were these forums. Yeah, there were these forums that I would just hang out on with these people. There were designers in there, developers, entrepreneurs, and there were just these internal forums. And I was very active, and no one could pronounce my name. So at some point, one of the founders of the platform just referenced me as Stammy, and I kind of went with that for years now.
You're like, okay, that works.
Yep.
Do you actually have Stammy.com too, or any of the Stammy?
Yeah, I have Stammy. I didn't actually get into using Stammy until like pretty recently. I started off using my first letter, last name, Stamatiou, which I really kicking myself because I was on Instagram so early, 2010. Even when it was Bourbon, before it was Instagram, I was on it, but I never thought to get Stammy, and I don't have it.
So someone else has Stammy?
They did for a long time. Someone with a lot of cats, but now it's like it's empty. Yeah.
Well, if it's empty, you could probably see if you could go through the correct channels to
I gotta try
acquire that. Worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also get a lot of cats and just say you're that person. I'm sure they'll let you have it. It's worth it for the cats, at least. Wow.
Yeah, so I definitely have a lot of different like Stammy.com variations. Stammy.dev, that was a random purchase. For a while, like when the .app TLD came out, I was like, oh, this is gonna be interesting. Like this is gonna blow up. So I bought Paul.app, which at the time, since it was 4 letters, it was $880. So I bought it. I bought it for a year, and then I was like, this is not going anywhere. I don't want to pay this much per year, so I let it expire. Because I kind of have this deep want of like one day getting Paul.com. I think I approached the guy. It's just not gonna happen. The guy worked for ICANN, like the domain corporation.
Oh yeah.
So he's never gonna forget to renew that domain. That's for sure.
What is it right now?
I think it's landing page for his like consulting business. And it's like 1-800-Paul.com. It's just he's fully bought into it, so that's not gonna happen.
Don't worry, leave that part out. We're not going to promote him.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're starting to get around to the end of the show. Brian, do you want to jump into your Brian question, or should we jump to the lightning round? I like your question, the Brian question.
The Brian question. I don't have one right for the show, but we could jump to the lightning round. Before we do that, I am curious. Is there an article on your site or post rather, that is the most visited?
The most visited. I can check.
Oh, interesting.
I think maybe not all time, but if you buy
the Android one,
the Android one was the most viral. That got like maybe 600,000 visitors that month. If you bias towards recency, my Lightroom PC one, I'm always getting drive-by Google visitors. I tried to buy AdWords on that once. I was just curious how AdWords work, but you can't do them if it has a copyrighted or trademark name in it, like Lightroom.
Really?
It was my first time. It was my first time ever using AdWords, so I wasn't exactly sure how it worked, but I was just curious.
Oh, all right.
Makes
cool. So the lightning round. The lightning round is basically we're all going to ask you a question. You answer it. They're just random questions about
really fast.
Yeah, really fast.
Let's do it.
I'll go first. Would you rather be shot out of a cannon or have your head in a lion's mouth in the circus?
Cannon, yeah.
Okay.
Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, geez. Alf's not a cartoon, so that doesn't count.
There was an Alf cartoon, actually.
Maybe.
So, next question, Sarah.
Gummy bears. I think that was the thing.
Gummy bears? Oh, yeah. The jumping.
Yeah.
All right. So favorite breakfast cereal as a kid?
It was probably Cheerios, maybe Grape Nuts as I got older. I think Cheerios.
Oh my God, were you like an 80-year-old kid? Holy crap.
Jeez, judgy.
I agree. I love the Grape Nuts. Dang, Sarah.
Keeping on the
I love Grape Nuts too.
Keeping on the food trend, describe your perfect sandwich.
Okay, we're gonna have some kind of whole wheat bread of some sort. It's gonna have, if possible, like a
80-year-old.
Maybe like a habanero or chipotle or ghost pepper aioli, like a very thin spread. Maybe some salami, some turkey, some kind of lettuce in there. Maybe banana peppers if they're around. That's probably it. Yeah.
Paul, if you could not be in front of a computer for the rest of your life for some reason unbeknown to us, what would you be doing professionally?
Photography probably, which would be hard because I couldn't edit the photos, but I guess I would just figure out how to do like decent JPEGs.
Old school.
Yeah. Jeez, darker.
Yeah.
So a place that you've always wanted to travel to but haven't been yet.
Patagonia and South America. Haven't done anything South America yet.
Me neither.
Brian.
Favorite dessert until I remember the other one.
Probably like chocolate lava cake.
Ooh, nice.
What's the
Very
subject?
specific.
Oh,
I was just like, I would go there a lot at Chili's. They had a really good one.
oh yeah, they do, right?
They actually do.
Baby back, baby back. What's a subject that you really adore but haven't had the time to write about?
Good one.
Thank you.
Probably writing about photography, not showing photos, but like how I think about the art of it. Maybe I've touched on it a little bit, but not really.
Interesting. Sarah?
Oh, is it my turn? Damn it.
Yes, sir.
Design tool of choice.
For me, that's a tie between Figma and Framer. Figma for like just visual designs, Framer for really high fidelity prototyping.
You hear that, my coworkers? Figma. They listen to
Figma.
the show,
Figma's
so
amazing.
I'm trying to convert everyone.
It's good.
What's a fear of yours?
Oh, waking up and like being late for an exam. That like,
do you do that still?
no, that like constant nightmare that you're still in school and you missed an exam. Yeah, I still have those.
That's funny.
Paul, on a scale from 9 to 10, or maybe 10 to 11, how much do you love this book by Sarah
Oh
Veselov?
my god.
Building Design.
I hate you.
That's definitely a
I
12.
hate
A
so
12?
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah actually signed my book with XOs. So if you buy her book, she will sign it and put love in
Awesome.
there. So
Do
yeah,
that.
find it at what's the URL, Sarah?
Oh, God.
You know what? I don't remember right now, but
That's
I'll
perfect.
put the
That's
link in the
perfect.
show notes.
You know,
Go ahead, Sarah.
find
Shoot
it
a
on
question.
Twitter and ask. Oh my god. What's the most embarrassing moment of your life?
Oh, I don't think we want to dig there. I don't even know how to pick from the top 10.
Oh,
All
not
right,
even
moving on,
one?
Brian.
Come on.
No, I don't.
Skipping
know.
that one. He's like, nope.
That's fine.
No comment.
That's fine. Yeah. Brian.
Are you still on a Android phone?
Right now, I have two phones. I have a Pixel 3. I have an iPhone 11 Pro. They both have active SIMs. They both have phone numbers. They're both most of the time with me.
Two separate phone numbers?
Largely because I got to test like various Android
Oh.
builds for the company.
That makes sense.
So I've always had two phones. Google Fi makes it so easy to have two SIMs, so it's easy.
Paul, favorite anime?
Oh, I'm not really into anime. I don't really know any, to be honest.
Hashtag BOO. Sarah?
Oh my god. Favorite color. I'm running out of questions, people.
Oh, I could do this all
either
night.
like
I
think
could do this all night.
definitely blue.
Well, there you go.
What was the last time you got injured enough that you had to go to the doctor?
It was probably when I was doing my startup. I was like working way too much, do a lot of all-nighters, and one time I was drinking a lot of coffee, which apparently dehydrates you. And I woke up at 6 a.m. I was like really lightheaded, and I just fainted. I hit my head, so I had to go to the ER.
Wow.
Got it.
So drink lots of water if you work from home a lot, or if you work for long stints.
Paul, here's a question. You come home,
Here it
it's
is.
late at night, maybe 1 a.m. It's raining, it's pouring, the lights are out, the power's out. You open the front door, and you see a ghost. What do you do?
I get my phone out and I tweet about it.
Nice, well
Oh,
said.
God.
How many characters? Oh, wait, that's another question. I'm sorry. Sarah.
Oh my god.
You want to ask me both, Sarah? That could be a question.
No. You totally threw me off
Design
with this
systems.
whole like roasting me thing.
Oh.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, favorite author. I did kind of step right into that one, didn't I? Damn it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit. Skosh.
Yep.
Brian?
No, but seriously, you write a lot. Who do you like to read?
I've recently gotten into Ted Chiang. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name properly. He does kind of like these sci-fi things, and one of his short stories was turned into I think the movie was called The Arrival. So each book is a series of short stories. I like him, and also someone whose name I'm blanking on. David Sedaris.
Oh, David Sedaris.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Oh, absolutely the crunchiest I could find. Like
Yes.
mostly peanuts.
I like that. Good answer.
Paul, what do you do that brings you the most happiness on a day-to-day basis? Not what something that you might want to do, but what do you do that brings you the most happiness?
I think for me, I always have some side project. So if I go home and I'm not like completely tired, working on an article, editing photos, just tinkering with something, learning some new JavaScript library. I always kind of have some side project going on. So I think I need that to keep my mind going.
I'm actually curious.
Sarah?
This is not really a lightning round. This is something I was going to ask earlier, but I just couldn't find the right time. So I'll ask it now. So I was curious. You talked a lot about your writing process, and it sounds a lot to. This sounds terrible. Yes, I've written a book, so I'm very familiar with that process. But I found that when I was writing, that my process of writing was actually really similar to my design process. So I hate you so much. So I was curious if you found that to be the same. Is your design process and your writing process similar, or are they very different?
That's a good question. I feel like my design process is very different. Like when I'm writing, I have an outline, and that doesn't really change throughout the writing, the life cycle of that one post. And I'm just adding more detail and color, and maybe I'm reordering a few things. But for the most part, it's fairly like substantial there, or like fairly defined. With design process, I'm just like, I start off with a hunch, and then I kind of view it as like map and reduce, and like in terms of engineering, where I'm mapping first, I'm going far and wide, I'm trying a bunch of crazy concepts. And then I'm selectively picking a few things, iterating and going down until I have maybe 2 to 3 concepts I want to play with. So when I start that, I'm just going crazy as much as I can. And when I'm writing, I feel like it's always linearly expanding in a systematic way versus just like all over the place.
That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, no, mine's very, very like what you described your design process. That's my design process, and that's my writing process. I kind of start with all this crazy stuff, and I find myself like half of what I write, I throw away until I kind of find, because I have all these ideas of what I want to say, but I don't really know what's going to fit right until I kind of get it all out.
Yeah, that's a skill I don't have because my blog posts are really long. I just keep adding and keep adding.
Sometimes you got to build good ideas on a pile of bad ideas. If like you said, Sarah, like sometimes you got to get all that stuff out, and that helps you hone in an idea that's really good. So you should. It's important not to judge your ideas along the way, but just get everything out on paper or pad or typing, whatever you do with your fingers. But get those ideas out, and then you'll have the context of those ideas to craft something that might be more honed into what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
That was Frederick mansplaining. Mansplaining.
Mansplaining? Was I mansplaining?
Just kidding.
I think that the best revelation I have in that realm.
Stephanie Taylor, rude.
I think that the best revelation I have in that realm is moving stuff that is maybe not essential down to a footnote, and I still keep it there. But if people want to see it, it's like kind of hidden down there.
Yeah, like how you go ahead, sir.
It adds color to it. Oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Brian, stop mansplaining.
What? I had to roast you a little bit. You've been roasting her.
See how it feels?
I apologize, Paul. They're just, I don't know what's wrong with them.
Brian's the worst. Yeah, I apologize too. Paul, we're getting close to the end of the show. We have a few last questions. We definitely always like to ask our guests, what is the best and preferred way that you want people to get to know you better? Where should they go? Website, Twitter handle, whatnot?
I think my website does have a lot of information about like where I'm coming from, like my really in-depth articles. But really, like the best way to actually know who I am is probably my Twitter, because you see like all the stream of thoughts and consciousness as it's happening, as it's going out there, instead of my blog, which is like extremely refined. Everything you're seeing probably took a couple months to work on, versus Twitter is just like, here's a random idea.
That would have been hilarious if he'd been like, yeah, Facebook.
Or pulled out something else like Vine.
Yeah, I will say of every single social media platform, even though there's bad people on Twitter too, just like every other, Twitter's my favorite of the social media platforms. You can really tailor, if you tailor your timeline, you can actually have a good experience there. Unlike
absolutely
everything else, in my opinion. But yeah, so thank you. If any of the Twitter people are listening, thank you.
Well said. Paul, last question, big question here. what is some advice or a message that you'd like to bestow our audience on parting farewell? Anything you want to get out there that you'd like to share? The stage is yours.
Has to be deep and meaningful.
Yeah. On that note, I think maybe like a self-serving thing I would like to share is just like start a personal blog. I would love to find more blogs to read. Even if you don't think you have a lot of stuff to share, start something. Like it's just fun to play with a new tool, be it whatever CMS you want to work on. I'm playing with Jekyll now. Maybe if I was starting today, I'll use Gatsby or Hugo or something like that, or even Ghost, or there's so many CMSs that could be fun to set up. Start there, treat it as a project, and then maybe start sharing, even just sharing links that you're reading. Those are still interesting. I follow a couple sites that are just sharing weekly links, and I find those useful. So I'd just say, go out there, start something, share some work. So hopefully I can start reading it.
Like that.
Yeah. Provide some value and get your ideas out. If not just for anyone else, yourself.
Yep.
Anyone else? Anybody got it?
No, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. I've been, again, I'll say a fan for years. So it was awesome talking to you. If you ever come to Florida, drinks on me.
Sounds good.
Thanks for talking to us. Yeah.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. And thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate joining the show. Again, as Brian said at the beginning, please go to the little subscribe thing, hit the bell, get notifications. Really appreciate you doing that. Take care, everyone. Appreciate it. See you next time.